In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast, it is part 2. Earlier today, James and I, we did it yesterday, but it posted today. James and I covered some of the top prospects at the U18 EuroBasket 2024 that ended Sunday. It was about close to a week-long tournament where some of the top under 18 prospects in Europe played. Yesterday, we covered 4 guys that are projected first-round picks, or at least 3 guys are projected first-round picks, and maybe 1 is on the rise. But in this episode, we're going to talk about a few of the players that stood out, because none of the guys, whether it's Nolan Traore, Noah Asingbe, and Hugo Gonzalez, the guys that came into the tournament with all the hype, but none of them made the All-Star 5. So James and I, we're going to share our thoughts on some of the players that stood out at the U18. Stay tuned. But before we get started, I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. And my co-host for today is none other than my brother James. We broke down or shared our thoughts on some of the players yesterday. So James, I'll start with you. Which player stood out to you the most outside of the guys that we mentioned earlier at the FIBA U18s?
I'm going to go with the Kendrick Lamar angle, and I guess you can call it some hate. I've been hearing the name, is it Dame Sarr? I'm going to call him Dame Sarr. I've been hearing the name Dame Sarr for some time.
That's his name, Dame Sarr. I mean, that's pretty phonetically easy to pronounce.
They could have put the Dame on there, Dame Sarr. But I was disappointed in what I saw from him, man. And it was a combination of, okay, if you watch the tape, right, and you see what he can do, you're like, okay, I get it. This is why his name has been buzzing. This is why I keep hearing about him being a first-round pick potentially, or, because he's about 6'6", he's 190, he's long, he can handle. But he looks like what I had mentioned before about a guy the other day, but the efficiency wasn't there. And, it's an AAU style tournament. I get it, but he just kind of looks like he coasts at times. And I feel like for somebody with his talent level, his potential, he should have been better. I saw he shot like 40% from the field. He put up decent numbers.
34% from the floor.
34%. I knew that was right. He shot 34% from the field, and I'm like, how does that happen when you have that much talent? Now, it's not all bad. He plays the passing lanes well. He's long, he's skilled. He can make, I want to call it higher level reads, but he makes good passes. He has talent, but like for him to go out there and shoot 34% from the field it's alarming to me, because he's supposed to be one of those guys that we are talking about, and it was just disappointing. And again, maybe it was just a one-time thing. It's something that I'm going to be looking forward to in the future as I monitor him as a 2025 guy. But I was like, I was underwhelmed. And I'm not out on the kid, but I was underwhelmed. Now, there have been other times where I've seen the kid have a terrible situation or terrible outing, and maybe it was just that particular outing. But for the sake of this outing, for the sake of this podcast, I was underwhelmed with what I saw from Dame Sarr.
Yeah, he had some very uneven performances. He had a game against Israel where he had 18 points, 13 rebounds, and 11 assists and 3 steals. But he was like 5 of 18 from the floor that game. So even though he didn't shoot the ball well, he contributed in other ways. Then he had a game against Greece where he had 24 points and 12 rebounds. My first time watching him play was a couple years ago. It was like an under-16 tournament, and it was a tournament where I first saw Hugo Gonzalez. And I was impressed with him as a passer. I thought like he had really good vision, feel for the game, not necessarily like a point guard or a playmaker, but a guy that can make plays, a secondary ball handler. My knock on him at that point was he just wasn't always aggressive. I thought that he was a little passive, or he was too caught up in playing the right way. But I was intrigued by I mean, his arms, man, dude can scratch his knees standing straight up. He has long arms. I think he's a guy that you look at the physical tools and you may want him to be like this alpha, but I think he is the type of guy or has the type of game that is best suited for a complementary role. But yeah, I agree that, shooting 31% from the floor, 21% from three, and also 59% from the foul line isn't necessarily a good look. But I thought like the 6 rebounds, a little under 5 assists were I thought that was good for a guy that was looking for ways to contribute when his team when the shot wasn't falling. But I want to switch it over. I want to talk about Christian Anderson. Now, I'm kind of conflicted in mentioning Christian Anderson in this simply because I know he plays for Germany. I know he represents Germany, but Christian's an American. Like he's an American. I mean, he played at Oak Hill. I forgot where he went before. Played high school in Georgia. Everything about him screams American. I think that, and I could be wrong, but I think it's kind of like Elliot Cadeau in a sense. Cadeau was,
But he's not the only one out here that we're even going to talk about too, because some of these other dudes are
they are,
full-fledged Americans. So let's shoot him a little bit
yeah.
under there. But go
But no,
ahead.
but you can't either way. Whether or not that I want to like not necessarily say that he's like fully. I mean, that he's an American, but I can't knock his performance. He led Germany to the championship game, and he had a really good tournament. I know, like in the final game, he had like 31 points, 5 assists. Overall, he averaged 20 points per game, 5 assists, 2 rebounds. He's listed at 6'2", so he's grown. I
He's
know.
long too.
Yeah, he has long arms. He's going to Texas Tech next year. He always looks a little small for his size, or he just looks smaller on the court. But 6'2", if that's legit, that's respectable. But what are your thoughts on Christian Anderson's performance?
He does a lot of good things that you would want to see from a scoring point guard. In
Mhm.
particular, like it's stuff like I don't know what the the exact terminology or what the I'm not just being disrespectful, but the Instagram trainers are calling it. But there's a move where when CJ McCollum comes off a screen and he takes like a big gather into his shot, he doesn't shoot the ball like right off of the edge of the shoulder of the offensive screener. He like throws it out there in front. Christian Anderson does that. And it's little stuff like that that helps you create space as a point guard, as anybody really under 6'3", 6'4". But CJ McCollum does it a lot. He basically does it every single possession. Little stuff like that, he does very well. He has legit NBA range. He's comfortable. And he has good pace too. Like he's not the quickest guy, but he gets you on your hip on his hip and lets the defense ride him. And then that sets up that Gortat screen that we always see. And like he just has good pace. I think he I think long term, if the shooting continues to do what it does and he, continues to fill out, I think long term he may have an opportunity because at 6'1", 6'2", or however tall he is, his ability to stretch the floor and run the team, I think he gives himself a chance if we're talking about like NBA. I don't know if he's going to be a one and done guy, but I think he gives himself a chance in a few years as a point guard because again, he can shoot. I think he's a good enough passer. Um, and really like he does good things in the pick and roll. And like in my notes, I say ironically he is representing Germany, but I think he should like study Dennis Schroeder film as far as just like change of pace. He's not as quick as Schroeder, but like being selective as far as when to shoot, when to pass. But I like him, played very well. I think he made a name for himself in that environment, especially because there were other guys who are on the NBA radars who did play well, and he led his team to the championship. So shout out to Christian Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's well known, especially in Europe. And I mean, he played at Oak Hill. I just think that because of his size and maybe just lack of like elite athleticism, he may not be considered an NBA draft pick. It's like a one and done guy. But ironically, he didn't shoot the ball well. He only shot 32% from three, which is interesting because shooting is like his best feature. But one of the things that I thought he did that really stood out was He shot 60% inside the arc. And if you watch the championship game against Serbia, he was 8 of 9 from the field inside the arc. So I thought Christian Anderson just did a good job of doing what he does outside of being a sniper. But I thought that, he led his team, and he's a guy that is probably going to be a little bit underrated, and his size is going to be held against him. All right, when we return, we're going to talk about a guy that he faced off against, one of James's favorite players, Savo Drezgic. Did I pronounce it right?
I believe
Savo
so.
Drezgic, who is going to Georgia. He's a guy that we've watched and we've scouted and we've talked about quite a bit just amongst ourselves. But let's talk about Game Time, because Game Time is my favorite app when it comes to buying major league tickets. What I love about Game Time is that they have priority last minute deals where you can save up to 60% on last minute concerts, comedy, and sporting events. They have flash deals where you can save even more. And it is an exclusive in-app deal on select seats that are available ahead of the game or the event. They have zone deals where you can save even more money when you let Game Time choose the seat. You pick the zone, they choose the seat. They have all-in pricing, which you can toggle this feature, which shows the total up front, so there are no surprise fees at checkouts. I know that is one of the most irritating things for me when I buy tickets to an event, is that the price looks totally different once you complete your cart. And then the panoramic view from every seat in the app before you buy. So that way you can see exactly where you're going to be sitting. You can see the view, you can see everything, and it's the actual seat. So that is very, very important. At least to me it is. But they also have a lowest price guarantee, and they will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. So take the guesswork out of buying major league tickets or even tickets to plays and concerts. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply, but create an account, use the redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I want to thank you for making the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast, because there is no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts, and you get it in 30 minutes or less. No one, absolutely no one, keeps you informed and as entertained as Locked On NBA. It is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, the next player that I want to talk about is James's favorite player. At least favorite international prospect, if I'm not mistaken. And it is Savo Drezgic. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. We first saw him play at Basketball Without Borders All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis. If you can go back, and we talked about him in the podcast back in February. He had a strong tournament, 20 points per game, 5.6 assists, 5.6 rebounds. He's tough. He's 6'4". He's strong. He's
Real
crafty.
life 6'4".
He's going to Georgia next year, and he led his team to the finals when they lost to Germany. But what were your overall thoughts on his performance?
Man, Savo can hoop. Savo is a gifted passer, playmaker. If you search his name on Twitter, he had a play in 3SSB. He threw a behind the same play that LeBron made, the behind the back post entry pass to I think it was Embiid that was cutting.
Yeah.
Savo made that same play in 3SSB. Savo is a pick and roll savant. Just real quick, I saw him when I went to Omaha in April, and he came off the bench. I tweeted about it. Stone cold. Don't think his teammates knew who he was. He got in the game. Team was down 10. He got in the game. They go up 10. Like, he just pick and roll master. Played well at Basketball Without Borders. He is tough. He matched up against Darren Peterson. Like, he took the assignment. Darren Peterson is tough. He took the assignment. Darren Peterson guarded him full court. He had the strength, but to bring it home, I like what I saw from Savo. The playmaking, everything is there. His biggest thing, long term is beating switches in pick and roll because he has all the answers as far as like you go over the top of the screen. He can find guys. He's a gifted passer. But when I saw him in 3SSB, teams started to switch on him and they put the power fours on them and they just say, hey, you got to beat us one on one. And he's not the quickest guy, but if the three ball's falling, he can get you into trouble. And that's how he was putting up those 30-point games because he was making those deep threes off the dribble when teams were switching on a pick and roll. So I really like Sabo. I hope he gets a lot of run at Georgia. Him and Asa Newell. You know how Rob feels about Asa Newell. He does work. I think him and Asa Newell can be a really good pick and roll tandem, but I'm a big fan of his. I think he has NBA potential. Not a one and done guy, but I think he's somebody that will find himself in the association. Great size, great feel for the game. Big fan of the kid.
Yeah, I thought he played extremely well in this tournament. He averaged 20 a game, and he had a game where he only had 7 points and shot 1 of 7 from the floor. So if you shoot 48% and average 20 a game, and you have a game where you're like 1 of 7, that means you were putting in work in the other games. And just to show you, he had 30 in the final against Germany. He had 35 against Israel. Against Israel, he had 35 and 12 assists along with 8 rebounds. He had a 29-point game against Latvia, and he ended up shooting 48% from the floor. And I mentioned the 1 for 17 game. He had a 1 for 7 game. He had a 4 for 17 game. So surrounding that, he had an 8 of 13 game, 11 of 16 game, 9 of 16, 10 of 18. He ended up shooting 39% from three on about 6 attempts per game. I like him. I mean, he's tough. I know sometimes it's easy to generalize players based off of where they're from, but he has what you expect out of a Serbian player. He's going to be tough. He's going to be skilled. He's going to be able to make plays for others, and I really like his upside. I think he's probably one of the more underrated draft picks, and I think there is a good chance that he sneaks up on a lot of NBA radars during his freshman season.
Yeah, if he in pick and roll, he like I said, he has all the answers. I don't know how this goes over with some of our listeners, but like if he can get the one-on-one just pace down where he can like beat switches, he is very, very tough. But like I said, if you put his name in Twitter on the search feature, you're gonna see some highlight playmaking because he has a gift for sure. And I mean, you see he is not afraid to get busy and put the ball in the basket. So big Sabo fan, man.
Yep. All right, I want to talk about this guy right before we go on the break. And I thought that he really, really made a name for himself. Julius Price from Sweden, 6'4",
When
another
you
guy
told me his
that's
name was Julius Price from Sweden, I was like, man, that's 100% an American right there.
well, if you looked at the Swedish team, there's a lot of
Man.
brothers on the floor for Sweden.
Shout
But
out to Sweden, man.
yeah, I like Price though. I thought he really made a name for himself. I know that he's established himself here as a high major recruit, but I thought in this setting right here, he showed that he's a very interesting and intriguing long-term prospect. He's 6'4". He has a quick step. I love the fact that he does have that gear and that blow-by speed to get in the paint. I think he does a good job of changing speeds. He's a good passer. He likes to pass on the move. I think that there is real promise for him as a three-level scorer because he has the speed
Yes.
to get to the rim. He does have the pace to stop and pop, which is interesting because sometimes when a guy has that type of speed, they don't have the pace to like stop and pop. It's like one speed, but he has, like I said, the pace, and he knows how to stop on the dime, get to his spots, pull up and shoot threes or shoot pull up jumpers over smaller defenders. I think he's going to be a good 3-point shooter. I thought he really made a name for himself on the international stage. Now, my concerns were he does have a little tendency to play out of control. He is a high risk, high reward passer, and I think he needs to do a better job of like reading the second line of the defense because I think sometimes he gets himself into a little trouble. But for me, as a person that like really like studies guys, I thought after a few games, I noticed that he's pretty predictable. If he is going to his left, he's going to shoot a jumper. If he's going right, he's going all the way to the rack. So I think if he can add a little bit more variance into his game as far as that, I think he's a legitimate NBA prospect.
I will say this. He is a 20, well, on paper, he's a 2026 kid. So he
Mhm.
still has another year of high school too.
Yeah.
So he has time. I mean, he's not, I mean, yeah, he has time. But and I will say this too, again, all the brothers out there that was playing with Sweden, like he played a lot of like two and even some three.
Yeah.
And whatever, if you don't even believe in positions, he played off the ball a lot. And I still think he ended up at like 21 a game. So I like him. At first, I was like, but as I dug a little deeper into the film, I was like, yeah, the change of pace is there. Again, very good mid-range shooter. I I'm drawing a blank. I'm not saying he plays like somebody, but he moves like somebody, and I just can't think of it
It's
of who
yeah, the way he
who.
moves is a little different. It's almost like the first time you watch him, you have to watch him throughout a whole game and be like, wait a minute, he's really fast because
Yeah,
it's just weird. Like it just doesn't like necessarily pop out. But he averaged 21 a game, was second in the tournament in scoring, 51% from the floor, and 44% from three on 6 attempts per game.
yeah. His stock. I mean, I don't pretend to know too much about him prior to this. I'm not gonna lie, but like he should have like 35 offers because like he's legit good, and he'll probably end up reclassifying because I think his birthday was he's like 17 right now, and he's a 17-year-old rising junior here in the States, so he should be a senior. But if he reclasses, like school should be all over him for sure.
Yeah, he is. He was born on October 8th, 2006. All right, when we return, I want to talk about a guy that the numbers look good. A lot of people like him. Yeah, it just didn't pop out to me, and that is Urban Kroflic from Slovenia. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you about eBay Motors because passion, drive, and patience, that is the formula for winning championships. And it is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Whether it's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you will get your money back. That's because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and the eBay guaranteed fit is only available for U.S. customers. All right, last segment. Let's talk about Urban Kroflic. He's a guy that a lot of people really like. I watched his film. It just, I put it like this: when I watch him, I see the versatility. He has good size at 6'6". The numbers were good: 16 points, 8.6 rebounds, 5.4 assists. He stuffed the stat sheet. He shot a little under 38% from three on about 5 attempts per game. Doesn't miss free throws. Was about 86% from the foul line. He had a good game against the Sweden team that we just talked about with 21 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists. It's just something about him that just, again, it just wasn't like sexy to me. It didn't pop out or scream NBA, and I could be wrong. And it's in the eyes of the beholder in a sense, but the numbers don't lie. What were your thoughts?
So with Urban, like you said, great size, good passer. It was just a lot of good, and he didn't do like you said. It's not really off the dribble. He's not beating people off the dribble. He's just like a good basketball player, and that's like not a knock, and at the same time, it's like a capped praise, if that makes any sense. But he was to me, like you said, I don't see like somebody that comes over like right away if he is drafted or even long-term NBA. But he's just to me, he looked like he was just really, really screen dependent. Like he needed a screen every trip down the court. And again, I understand European basketball isn't about isolation and individualism, but it was like without a screen, he couldn't go by anybody.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like he makes the most of his opportunities.
And he
Uh,
scored a lot of points in the
and he
paint.
scored a lot of points. So I'm not trying to come off as a hater. It's just he just looks like a really, really good basketball player who I don't see like for the draft somebody I'm taking in the first round. Maybe he's a second round pick. I need to again. I think is he playing for Mega next year?
Yep.
Yeah. So he'll be somebody I am not like. So for example, when I look at Hugo Gonzalez, obviously Hugo Gonzalez is Hugo Gonzalez, but I look at him and I'm like, okay, that's an NBA player for sure. I'm keeping tabs on him. Let me see how it develops. With him, I'm like, okay, let me keep tabs on him. Let me see how this looks as it goes on because I'm just not necessarily sold on him being an NBA player. But in this particular setting, he played very, very well. So that's
I
something to
think he
hang your hat
can
on.
be an NBA player. I don't know if it's going to be right away as like a one and done or two and done. I think he could be one of these guys that when he's 23 or 24 or a little
Yeah,
older ends up sneaking his way onto an NBA roster because he knows how to play the game. Yeah, I mean, he just doesn't have like the blow by speed or whatever. But one of the things I did like about him was the fact that he is a very good rebounder and he likes to push the pace and play fast, which is interesting because a lot of times when guys want to play fast and get up and down the court, it's when they feel like they have like an athleticism advantage.
hmm
And for him, despite like not being like an elite athlete, he likes to play fast. He wants to push the pace. He's a good rebounder that once he gets the rebound, he's looking to get out in transition. I think he can play on and off the ball. He's a good shooter with his feet set. Everything that I wrote about him in my notes
it's
screams
good.
good. Is
That's
just
the same here.
it's just like for whatever reason, it just didn't really pop out. And maybe it's because of the lack of blow by speed, or he's like a below the rim finisher, or maybe he didn't have like a mid range game. It was pretty predictable all the way to the basket or three, which is what the analytics say are the
hmm
best shots. But I did like the fact that he could make passes and he could pass all over the floor. So I'm gonna have to continue to watch him. I've been tracking him for years, but it's one of those things where, like I said, what my eyes were telling me was a lot different than what the numbers were saying, and even like my notes were saying. But I want to talk about my favorite name, and he was one of my favorite players, Mario Saint-Supery. I like his game. Now he popped out to me. He was appealing 6'3" guard from Spain. I like Spanish guards. I like guards from Argentina. Argentina. It's just something about this flash and this flair and the way they play as far as the pace. And Saint-Supery has everything that I visually like as far as just the Spanish flair. He's a crafty finisher. I have him as an advanced ball handler, not necessarily like crazy creative, but he's got like a little shiftiness. He knows how to shift defenders to get to a spot. He has
He
good
was carrying that
footwork.
ball like crazy, man.
I mean, what's not a carry now?
Man, he was carrying at the park carrying, but
Yeah, what's not a carry now? But I thought he did a good job of like stuffing the stat sheet with points, rebounds, and assists. He's a good rebounder. I love his pace. He's never in a hurry. And he scores most of his points in the paint, has like a crazy like variation of different floaters and different angles and touch shots and euro steps and long step finishes. He likes to play through contact. He's somewhat of a reluctant shooter though. He likes to get to the rack, reluctant shooter. Doesn't have like great blow by speed. His release is a little slow. Now, the
his
biggest
release was very slow.
well, yeah, okay, very slow. But
It
the
was
biggest
very
knock I
slow.
had on him was he pounds the ball. He has a lot of possessions where he was just pounding the ball. Now, I don't know if it was because if you took Hugo away as an option, there was not much there for Spain, and maybe he was trying to run something. But I thought it was interesting because you don't really usually see like Spanish guards that are just pound the ball consistently.
He was just I mean again, the numbers are great, right? He does a lot of good things, but he was just like all right to me. And like you said, the first clip of him shooting that jumper, and I saw that wind up, I was like, oh man, how did he average 21? But again, he gets to the paint. But
5 rebounds and 6 assists at
he's
6'3".
good. I'm not
Yeah.
saying he's not, but I saw that wind up, man, and I was immediately turned off of his game. I guess you could say NBA potential because you got to be able to get that thing off quick. I don't care if you're 6'3" or 6'8", like you got to have a quicker release, and that's something you can improve upon. I don't know if he's an NBA guy anytime soon. He may be on the urban Kroflic plan where you come over at 23 or 24. But again, he's got some gifts, but yeah, just that jump shot being so slow was kind of like a turn off to me. And um didn't really have like blow by. I understand blow by speed isn't everything, but the handle kind of looked a little loose.
Yeah.
A little too loose for my liking. So that's just
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, he also averaged 5 turnovers a game. So I don't know if he's a 1 or a 2. I mean, the assists and turnovers are almost pretty even. Actually, he had 6.3 assists and 5.3 turnovers. You don't want 5 turnovers a game. Only shot 31% or 32% if you round it up from three. But he shot about 79% from the foul line. He's a name that I'm going to monitor. I like him. He was just visually appealing to me.
I think he could be a good college player if he decided to come over, though.
Yeah, I agree. So actually, before we go, I want to talk about a guy,
Yeah,
Hans Steinbach. Like, I can't knock his numbers. He was on the winning team, and he had some very impressive games. I mean, there's a couple other guys that, for sake of time.
Jaden Hodge has some talent.
Jaden Hodge has some talent. I mean, I saw there's at least 20 guys that I think are at least high major players. I don't know about NBA. Abdalis from Greece, Nicolas Abdalis from Greece. I like him. He didn't have the best tournament, but the Steinbach kid from Germany,
German Tyler Hansborough out there, man.
man, he averaged like 13 rebounds a game. Had one game where he had like 18 rebounds. I mean, he's 6'8". He's undersized.
Tyler Hansborough, man.
But I'm just read these numbers off and I'll let the audience go. He averaged 15.4 points, 13 rebounds. He had a game of 18 rebounds, 15 rebounds, 19 rebounds, 17 rebounds, 11 rebounds. He had one game where he only had 4 rebounds. But other than that, I mean, 15 and 18, 16 and 19. He had a game against.
What were his offensive rebound numbers? Do you have those?
He averaged 6 offensive rebounds per game. He had a game against Denmark where he had 25.17 rebounds. So just off production alone, he may not be jumping out the gym. He may not have great size and length, but 15 and 13 a game deserves a shout out. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Stay tuned for the rest of the week. I'm going to have Richard Stayman and Leif Thulin on. We're going to talk about NIL and how NIL may have impacted the 2025 draft and some of the guys from 2024 that decided to stay in school because of NIL money. We're going to talk about, was it a good decision? And then also we're just going to talk about this 2025 class. It's been very, very hyped, but we want to see, at least right now, how it compares to some of the other classes in years past. Once again, it's Rafael with my brother James, and we are out of here.